The paperwork took 11 minutes. 47 years of marriage, 11 minutes to file the end of it. The woman behind the desk had a cheese and onion crisp packet next to her keyboard, and she offered me a biscuit from a tin while the printer warmed up. I said no thank you. She said most people cry at this part. I said I'd been crying since 1994. She didn't know what to do with that, so she handed me a pen. I was 76 years old. I want to tell you something about that number, not to make you feel something. I am not interested in making you feel something. I want to tell you because the number matters, and I wasted a lot of years not understanding why. I'm Patsy Malone. I ran an alterations shop in Salford for 41 years. I took in hems, let out seams, replaced zips, relined coats. I fixed things that other people had broken or outgrown. I charged fair prices, and I did good work, and I kept 3 children fed on it. My husband Dennis contributed when he felt like it, which in the later years was not often. I left him on a Tuesday. I had been planning to leave him since I was 29 years old. Let me tell you about the plan. The kids were 11, 8, and 6. Dennis had been out of steady work for 2 years by then. The drinking was bad, but it wasn't yet the main event. That came later. In 1994, it was still just the backdrop. I had a plan, proper plan, written down. In the back of the notebook I kept for fabric orders, between the measurements for a woman called Gloria Higgins, who needed her mother's wedding dress let out 3 inches at the waist. The plan was this: save enough to rent a small flat, get the kids through school, keep the shop running. When the youngest turned 18, go. It was a good plan. It was reasonable. It was practical. I am a practical woman. I can tell you that without embarrassment. I looked at that plan for 29 years. You want to know what interrupted it? Nothing interrupted it. That's the part that took me longest to understand. The plan didn't fail because Dennis got worse, though he did. It didn't fail because money got tight, though it did. It didn't fail because the kids needed me, though they did at first. The plan failed because I kept finding reasons to delay it, and at some point the reasons became the marriage, and I couldn't see where one ended and the other started. My crooked finger, the right index finger, angled out at a wrong angle since I reset it badly in 1999. I notice it every time I pick up a needle, every single time for 25 years. You'd think you'd stop noticing. You don't. Here is the mistake, one mistake. Everything else grew out of it. I decided, not once, but repeatedly, over decades, that the right time had not yet arrived. That is the whole of it. Not that I stayed. Plenty of people stay in hard marriages and find their way through. Not that I tried to make it work. That's a reasonable thing to try. The mistake was this specific and peculiar belief that there was a correct moment coming, that I would recognize it when it arrived, and that acting before it arrived would be premature. I was waiting for permission from time itself, and time, as it turns out, does not issue permits. I had a customer years ago, Margaret, retired headmistress, brought in the same winter coat every October for about 15 years, lining replaced, buttons replaced, collar turned. Beautiful coat. I asked her once why she didn't just buy a new one. She said she was waiting until she really needed to. The coat was already 20 years old when she told me that. She wore it another 8 years until the wool finally gave up entirely. Then she bought a new coat, wore it twice, and died of a stroke. I sewed her funeral outfit. I didn't understand the lesson at the time. I just thought it was sad about the coat. In my 30s, I told myself, when Dennis sorts himself out. He was going to sort himself out. I had evidence, or I had things that looked like evidence if you turned them slightly and didn't look directly at them. A good month. A job that lasted 6 months before it didn't. A Christmas where he was decent to the children. I was very good at oblique angles. What that decade cost me, I don't know exactly, not the money, though the money was real. I mean the version of myself that existed in that front room after the shop was shut and the kids were in bed, and I sat with a cup of tea and did not think about anything, because thinking about anything led to the same wall. I learned to not think in my 30s. I got very good at it. Some of you are doing this right now. You know exactly what I mean, and you would prefer I moved on. I'm not moving on yet. In my 40s, I shifted the terms. It was no longer when Dennis sorts himself out. It was when the youngest finishes school. The youngest finished school in 2008. I found a new reason inside of about 3 weeks. I was efficient with that, at least. By then, it wasn't even about Dennis particularly. He was what he was by then. The thing I was managing was my own sense that leaving would mean the previous decades had been a mistake. Do you follow that? If I leave now, I'm admitting that I should have left in 1994. If I leave in 1994, I'm admitting the whole marriage was wrong from the start. The longer you stay in a thing, the more expensive it becomes to admit it isn't working. Not emotionally expensive, actually expensive, in time, in years. This is where the one mistake becomes a trap. You stop asking, should I leave? You start asking, can I afford to admit I should have left? Those are completely different questions, and they only feel like the same one. My crooked finger ached badly the winter of 2020. I'd had 3 years in a row of damp winters, and the joint didn't like it. I sat in the shop with my hands around a mug of tea, and I thought about the plan in the notebook. I'd not looked at it in years. The notebook was long gone. But I remembered the handwriting, neat, practical. The measurements for Gloria Higgins's mother's wedding dress on one side. The woman who wrote that was 29 years old. I was 73. I thought she would not believe this, not in a self-pitying way, just as a fact. The 29-year-old version of me would simply not believe that she was going to sit in this same shop, in this same chair, for another 44 years, waiting for a moment that had passed her about 40 times already. The dark humor here, and there is dark humor here, you have to find it or you'll go under, is that Dennis by 2020 was just an old man who watched television and fell asleep before 9 p.m. and occasionally said something unpleasant about dinner. The marriage had not been dangerous for years. It had just been thoroughly ordinary in a way I had not consented to. I had been waiting to leave something dramatic. The drama had left years before me. You think you have time? You don't, but not for the reason you think. It's not that you'll die. You might not. I'm 76 and I still hem trousers. It's that the person you're delaying on behalf of, the future you who will act when the right moment arrives, that person has a shorter and shorter runway. Not to live, to change. At 29, I had 47 years of fully formed habit ahead of me if I stayed. At 50, I had 26 years. At 76, I have however many I have left, which I don't know, which nobody knows, and which I have decided to spend differently. The one thing I wish I'd done 30 years earlier was stop negotiating with the future. I don't mean I wish I'd left Dennis at 46 specifically, though I do think that. I mean, I wish I'd understood that the future is not a savings account. You cannot deposit decisions into it and collect them later with interest. The decisions you put off do not sit there waiting. They accumulate differently. They become the walls. Midway through writing this, I noticed my finger again. Picking up the pen, that outward angle. I've had it for 25 years. I reset it wrong because I kept working and didn't let it heal properly. At the time, I thought I had no choice. Looking back, I had a choice. I made it, and I made it wrong, and now my finger is permanently bent. It doesn't stop me sewing, but every time I pick up a needle, I know. I am not telling you to leave your marriage. I don't know your marriage. I am telling you that if you have a plan, written or unwritten, spoken or kept entirely to yourself, and you have been adding conditions to it for more than 5 years, the conditions are no longer conditions. They are the plan. And the plan is to never act. There's no dramatic version of this. That's the part people don't expect. They expect me to tell them there was a moment of clarity, a scene, something cinematic. There was a Tuesday in March, and a woman with a crisp packet and a tin of biscuits and 11 minutes of paperwork. The dramatic moment would have been 1994 if I'd left then. It would have been a story. 2 kids in the back of a taxi, boxes of fabric samples, somewhere to be. Instead, I have a very quiet Tuesday and 47 years of alterations work, and 3 children who turned out well despite everything, and 1 permanently crooked finger that knows the cost of not stopping when you should. You're allowed to stop waiting for the right time. That's not advice. That's just what I know now that I didn't know at 29. The right time was the time you already had.